Your car guy here. Today, 2008 Toyota Avalon, and yes, we are in a parking lot at a Walmart, and it's 96 degrees. Normally I wouldn't do this, but this is my mother-in-law's car, so unfortunately I'm kind of bound by marriage to do this. Anyway, the alternator has failed, and this is about 2 hours away from home, so I've driven out here, and I'm going to change this alternator here in this parking lot. I'll walk you through it as we go. I have verified that the alternator's bad. Just as an aside, one thing I will do for those of you who are unfamiliar with some of the terminology and ways to respond to your mechanic or explain your breakdown in a way that helps them decide if it's something that can be fixed easily or if it's something that's more in depth. So I'm going to do some videos on how to communicate with your mechanic, some of the phrases and terms we'll use. But if you look right here, the alternator is really not in a terrible spot. We do have some water pump plumbing coming above it, but this is the alternator right here. See our main power wire coming in, our other connection. Our top bolt's going to be easy to get to right here. The other bolt's going to be down in there. Not that bad. First things first, I'm going to disconnect the battery, just the negative side. So right here, 10mm wrench or socket will disconnect the negative pole. Just set it out of the way so it's not going to touch. This de-energizes the system, so you're not going to electrocute yourself or fry anything while you're doing this job. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take off this panel here because I need it out of the way in order to have room to bring that alternator up and out. If you're just looking at it, you're probably going, well, how the heck's that come out? It's going to come out the top. We just need to get this out of the way, and this is just held in with some push clips, and some of these are bad. That one's already broken. So if you pop that down right in the center, they'll pop out. So push down and then that clip will release nice and easy. That one jumped right out. So push down the centers of these clips and then we'll be able to pull this whole panel up and out of our way. Real quick, when you remove this panel, you'll see it slides up under some of these things at the front. We're going to just lift at the back, slide it back to get it released from the headlights where it slides under. And then you'll just work it around the hood latch, get that out of the way, and then you can see we've got a lot more room in here to work with. All right, so first things first, I'm just going to pull this cover back. That gives me access. This is the main power wire. It's a 10mm nut, and we'll just break it loose and take that off to get that power wire out of the way. We're also going to take out this bolt here, which has got the wiring attached. I want that wiring to be free to move. Then if you look at this lower connector here, the lower connector has a tab that says push right here. That's to unlock it, and then simply slide it out. So there you see it unlocked, slid out. Get all your wiring off first. Okay, if you look right straight down there, you can see that pulley that's got the nut or bolt head sticking out of it. That is the tensioner. We're going to have to release the tensioner to remove the belt. Now, I'm not going to take the belt off every pulley. I'm just going to get it off the alternator. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a 14mm wrench down in there, grab a hold of that, and you can see by the way the belt rolls, I'm going to turn it counterclockwise if I'm standing over the passenger fender. Just push it over to release the tension off the belt, and I'll be able to just slide the belt off the alternator. Now I'm going to remove the two mounting bolts. The upper one is right here. The lower one is very difficult to see, and it's difficult to reach. It's down underneath diagonally, and we'll work on getting that. On this one, because I've got this hose right here, if you use a regular socket with a 3-inch extension, you'll get a little bit of room to break it loose without having to rub into the hose too much. But as you come back, you're going to run into the AC line, so once you get it loose, you're going to have to do a little bit of work. Okay, to try to help you see this lower bolt, if you can, I have my 14mm deep well socket on it. See that shiny part of the bar? And I'm using a flex head ratchet because I need to get a little bit of an angle back to be able to get this loose, and then I can just pull it These longer ratchets give you more leverage. If you don't have one, I highly recommend getting it. Now I've got it loose, and it'll just be a matter of getting that out and pulling the alternator out. And I'll show you how we finagle it out. I think I need more room in the front to get this out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the radiator off. It's not a very difficult job. So for starters, we're gonna pop these two hoses up out of this cooling vent or air intake vent. Pop out this clip right here, which goes in right there. And you'll see you just gotta squeeze from underneath those two tabs to pop that out. Take these two bolts out, these two bolts out, these two bolts out. And then we also have a tab that connects it to the grill here, and a bolt here that allows this radiator brace that it connects it down to the bottom. Once I unbolt these 4 bolts, take off this tab, that bolt, and get this out of the way, which this will just pop out, then I can take this radiator support and move it out of the way. After I remove that upper cover, you'll see there's another bolt there underneath to remove this down pipe, which that's where any water that gets ingested should drain back out. So we'll take out that bolt there as well. Okay, I have the alternator out now, and I'm going to show you what I did real quick. But there was something I failed to mention earlier, and that's this bracket on the back of the alternator down in underneath. And it bolts in right down here. 12mm bolt head. You can either take out that one, or you can bring your ratchet in and take out this one right here. I opted for this one just because it was easier. And then there's a wire clip that plugs into here. You have to squeeze the tabs and get loose. I had to unbolt this first, have everything loose, and then I could get to that wire tab, still working it in there. I didn't take the fans out, but I just took the entire radiator assembly with that top bracket off. You can move the entire assembly, and it had enough flex to wiggle the alternator up and out. Now it's time to go get a new alternator and put it back together. Now, while doing this job in the parking lot, that's what my car's thermometer is reading. That's reflective heat, let's face it. That's not really how hot it is. It's coming down now that my AC's on, but it's still a very hot day. Okay, got our new alternator here. I actually had them tested at the store before I brought it back, just in case. And as a matter of fact, before I even took the alternator off, I looked up the local parts store and made sure that they had the alternator in stock, and they had 2. And I'm glad I did, because the first one they pulled was broken. Right here, the mounting bolt had a nice crack through it. It probably would have gotten by in a pinch, but the simple fact is that thing would have eventually come apart. So I was able to get one that I know works and is not broken. First things first, I'm going to put my bracket back on the back of the alternator here before I mount this in the vehicle. I'm going to put this bracket back on right here. That's the 12mm bolt head, and then the other 12mm bolt head goes into the block, and we'll wiggle this thing back down into place. Okay, a couple of things I may not have mentioned in the video as I did it. I did take the 2 bolts out of the hood latch to get access to remove my radiator core support right off the top, and I did just pop off. This just simply snaps up off the engine and snaps back down on that out to give me some room. And I've got my radiator now pulled up and loose, but I've got all my connections still on, which means I don't have to drain any fluids or anything. And then I'm just gonna wiggle this alternator right down through this hole right here, get it back into place. I'll put my 12mm bolt that goes in right down here in. I'll put my lower bolt in and my upper bolt in, and before I tighten any of them, I'm going to make sure they're all in and down pretty far. The reason is, if I tighten one, it can actually make it shift a little bit and be hard to thread another bolt in, and we don't want to have to deal with that. So we'll get everything in place, get all our bolts threaded. I'll also clip that wire, and you'll see the plug right there on that wire that's laying on top of the AC compressor back into the underside of this clip. I'll do that before I bolt any of that back on. Okay, alternator is sit back into place. Time to put our 3 mounting bolts back in. Long one goes through the top. Short one goes bottom at the front there of the motor. And then this little 12mm goes right down below here into that bracket. So now I have all my bolts started, my upper alternator, my lower alternator, and then my bracket back there underneath at the back. And there you go, there's a view of that one. The bolt that you see above, that one with the big 8 on it. Now I'll tighten all of them tight, and we'll start reconnecting all of our electrical. Then once we have all our electrical, I'll actually put the belt back on, then I'll reassemble these other items to get everything finished. Okay, everything's tightened up, plugged back in on the alternator, put my wiring back on, clip that on. Haven't put my belt on yet. I'll put that on here in a minute. Gonna set my radiator back into place, just wiggled it back into spot, and I've just set the core support back into place. You'll know it's in right. These are the upper isolators on the radiator. They'll be sticking through and all your bolts line up. And it's a matter of bolting it back together. I do have to bolt my hood latch back on with the 2 bolts that I took out, and the 3rd bolt in the middle here. So 2 bolts there. My bolts here and here, hook back up this vent, bolts over here, and put my clip back in right here at the front, and we'll be in good shape. I did unplug the horns when I took out the radiator core support. I didn't show that in my video coming apart, but simply plug back in. They were easy to unplug. They have this big thumb button there that you just simply press down to release them, and now just stick your wires back in until they lock and snap. We'll get this tightened up, buttoned up. We'll put our belt back on. The belt may be a little bit difficult just because of where all it's routed. A lot of times with these, it may be necessary to take the under body cover off to get some room on some of the lower pulleys if I can't access them all, and get everything lined up from up top here, and then get it back on the tensioner. So we'll go to that point. And there it goes, off and working. This is your car guy. Please don't forget to like and share our videos. If I had to rate how it was to do this alternator, I'd say it was a pain in the butt. Not that much fun, but it's done. And now if you're enough of a pain freak that you want to try it for yourself, go right ahead. I'm packing up my tools and I'm going home. Don't forget to like and share. Please subscribe to the channel. Help us grow.